Thanks to New Jersey Senator Cory Booker for joining. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you. Thank you for having me on.
I should mention too, I grew up in New Jersey and you're the senator for my family who still lives there. So in a lot of ways, I feel like you actually represent me as well. You're from Newark, New Jersey. If anyone in the US Senate is able to speak about racism in this country, it's you. So Trump is taken to defending Confederate statues, which, to be clear, the Confederacy existed to protect slavery, period. So when Trump defends the Confederate flag and statues, do you perceive that as anything other than a racist dog whistle? Is there any other way to look at this?
I think that what we need to do is look at it in a larger historical context, besides the sort of banality, demeaning, degrading bigotry that our president has sort of evidenced at so many periods of his career. But I do think we cannot lose this fact that so many of our high elected leaders over the years have resorted towards rank racist demagoguery to try to instill fear and a kind of momentum to their own political course. And so I just, from Willie Horton to Wallace to, I can go through the leaders that we've known that have used this kind of tactic. And I just think it's important that we see that in a historical context, to know that so much of where our country has had deep streams of this kind of politics that has so affected our country and still has manifestations today.
What do you think has been greater during the Trump era? The emboldening of racists because of him, or the fight for equality that came about as a backlash to him?
I think that's going to still, that story has to be told still, I guess. I learned from this incredible woman on the 5th floor of the projects in Newark, right up the street from where I'm sitting now, who just seemed to really give me a new definition of what hope meant. And it's not this sort of Pollyannish, just believe, oh, things are going to get better somehow. No, it's like, this is a woman whose son was murdered in the lobby of the building I would eventually move into, who saw the wretchedness and viciousness that this country could wield on people. And yet she still chose hope. And she taught me that to sort of hope is this active conviction that despair won't have the last word. And so I'm just hoping that this is a time where people understand that we have to be instruments of the creation of a new America, that we have to be play a role in this country achieving itself. I think it's still in search of itself. And Trump doesn't define us. He's not the last word, so to speak. And we have to be. But I'm really worried, frankly, that this is going to be a period where people think that it's just about getting rid of Donald Trump, and then, our work is done. And that would be tragic, in my opinion, because I don't want to go back to the days before Donald Trump. I mean, there were millions of children that still drank water with lead in it before Donald Trump. There were people in my community still getting shot before Donald Trump. There was African Americans relegated still in our nation in dramatic ways to lower funded schools than white children before Donald Trump. I mean, I can go through Black women dying in childbirth almost 4 times that of white women before Donald Trump. And so this is really a moment where I hope it expands to something larger than a reaction to a racist president, but a larger commitment to the cause of our country in the face of persistent and institutional racial bias.
I think that's exactly what we're seeing, right? Especially with the House's Justice and Policing Act, which you co-authored for the Senate, and we'll get to that shortly. But a lot of this legislation is going to live on beyond Donald Trump. So at least the silver lining for what has amounted to a really vile presidency with regard to race, a lot of this is being codified and reformed in the form of legislation. So I think that that is a silver lining that we're seeing out of all this.
Right, but legislation is sort of it's a legislative manifestation of a spirit of a nation, right? I've seen in a very short period of time, just I think to what you're saying, that our country is beginning to sort of have a racial reckoning, but we're still at the top of it. I mean, I watched as a lot of people sort of became aware of the Greenwood massacre, the bombing of Wall Street. Well, there were massacres from Greenwood to Colfax, Louisiana. I mean, there's so many slaughtering of African Americans, prosperous African Americans, that African Americans asserting their freedoms and their liberties in this country that we don't talk about, that were in my great grandparents' generation and my grandmother's generation. And so there's a lot more work that we have to do in this country. And so I think that legislation is often the tail end of a movement, right? There was a whole bunch of awareness happening around labor issues. There was books being written that are woken people up, like The Jungle about meatpacking industry. There was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory Fire, tragic deaths of women who threw themselves. There was a whole bunch of this building up, and then the legislation came. It was circles of empathy being expanded, response to the tragic circumstances, awareness of the tragic circumstances that led to historical change. Well, I can tell you right now, I can give you policies that are right within our grasp that could eviscerate Black poverty in the United States, that could eliminate the racial wealth gap for young teens starting out in life. All these things are very possible. And it's, by the way, not radical policies. These are policies that reflect, frankly, the policies we've been doing to use our tax code to shift wealth up. Remember, things like the mortgage interest deduction is overwhelmingly used by people making over six figures in our country. It's a shifting of wealth. Well, there's things that we could do actually to create more equitable ends to a lot of these racial biases and schisms in our country. But I think that there's still more consciousness that has to happen to where we're aware of this in order to produce the kind of change that we need.
And I think a little bit of the onus also is on Democrats to make sure that Republicans can't, hijack the conversation and the talking points here, because like you said, I mean, a lot of what we use, when it's used for, the wealthiest people in this country, then it's completely acceptable. But as soon as, Democrats try to make sure that it's used, to benefit lower income folks, well, then all of a sudden it's extremist, it's radical, right? And I think if we allow the right to dictate the terms of the conversation, then those are the traps we're going to fall into.
I mean, absolutely. And I cannot tell you enough that the moments of backlash in this country have been real for African Americans when rights are beginning to be gained. I mean, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, for example, led to massive backlashes throughout the South that sent African Americans who took a few steps forward way back. And so I think that this is a moment where I'm hoping there can't be backlashes, because it's not seen as us versus them or Black versus white, et cetera, that we begin to understand how invested we are in each other, and where people start seeing that, wait a minute, this denial of African American dignity and humanity is hurting us all. Mass incarceration costs us billions and billions of wasted dollars every year. The criminal justice system, I go across the street from time to time and sit in the Integrity House, which is this incredible drug treatment facility, and you just see many of the men in the circles who've been arrested multiple times before they had an opportunity to get treatment. And it's just a waste of our own dollars and treasure. Right. We really belong to each other in this country. And so you're talking about Republican talking points, and in the back of my head, I'm sort of thinking, like, we will succeed when we get beyond seeing this as us versus them, left versus right, Black versus white, and begin to have an understanding that right now you and I are sitting here in a pandemic where America is exceptional in the wrong way, where we're an outlier. We've politicized literally wearing a mask. It's like we politicize science, which is not political, it's fact. And this kind of tearing each other apart is gonna be to our own demise. And in this case, it's been the demise of tens of thousands of people. And so that's what I worry about, is that we've got to get to a political culture where there is more of a common investment in the success of us all. Because right now we are so hurting from this type of politics. We're so hurting from as I think a great theologian, Martin Buber, talked about, creating the other in a time when really there is one American destiny, and we've got to understand that. And once large sections of our country, from immigrants to Latinos to Blacks, cannot be categorically so systematically denied equal opportunity, equal justice, equal housing, equal education, without it hurting the whole.
Building off of that, in terms of the unification of these, at least our parties, are you hearing from Republican colleagues that Trump's strategies here are a bad idea, that, attacking George Wallace and NASCAR and the NFL and basically any other entity where Black people are involved is not a good strategy for their party, or?
Yeah, Bubba Wallace. So yes, look, I don't understand it. I watched him over the 4th of July weekend, perplexed, because defending NASCAR, defending the Confederate flag, it's just not a winning strategy in 2020. It's just not. And so I don't see that. I haven't had the kind of conversations with my Republican friends. I have friends on the other side of the aisle that subsequent to that, those weekend speeches. But I just don't get it right now. I think that this is a losing strategy for a presidential reelect. But who knows? Does he not listen to his own people? And he's constantly putting Republicans in his own administration and in the Senate and House in the position they have to defend the indefensible.
Right.
And that's really hurtful. And right now, if the elections were held today, according to the polling at least, we would take back the Senate. And he's becoming an albatross. And I was recently listening to some of Lindsey Graham's predictions about Donald Trump when they were competing against each other for the presidency. And Lindsey Graham said very pointedly that this guy is going to be the end of the Republican Party. And
pretty prescient, huh?
Yeah, very much so.
What's the Republican defense against your bill to remove Confederate statues from the Capitol? How do you, I guess what I'm asking is, how do you reconcile being the party of patriots with the fact that the people they're defending are literally traitors?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the outrage right now. Is I see Mississippi, for crying out loud,
right,
changing its flag.
The liberal bastion of Mississippi.
Yes, the liberal bastion of the United States military, saying that we should change the names of military bases. So when the United States military, which is not the most known to be a liberal organization, or the state of Mississippi is ahead of you, you should really wonder that you are standing on sort of racist relics. It's just not the place you want, not the ground you want to stand on. And that's why I'm like, it is tedious. It is tiring. I mean, this has sort of been my life of the last couple months, which is just like, I can't believe I have to stand on the Senate floor to try to get folks to pass an anti-lynching bill. I mean, it's 2020. The public is with us. Republicans are with us. I can't believe that a traitorous regime that caused the bloodiest war in American history to defend the enslavement of God's children, of your brothers and sisters, that lasted 4 years, that there are states that think that these are the best representatives of their state. That is 100% not true. It is anti-democratic, and it is so painfully unjust. And I'm just tired. It's just like, come on, I'm tired. Why are we still having to fight these battles in the United States Senate when everybody knows they're on the wrong side of history on this issue? And so I'm gonna keep pressing this. I'm gonna keep fighting, even though I'm weary. And I just think this party will die if it doesn't. And their own, what was this? The Republicans, what do they call it? Their they did a self-examination right before Trump about what they had to do as a party, and they talked about how they have to start reaching out to minorities and for diversity, and they're literally right now engaged in the exact opposite. That is so injurious, not just to their party, but to the soul of America. So I can't tell you, man, I can't be a political pundit for you, but I can tell you as one senator And I know I've reflected by lots of Americans. It's just, I'm tired of this. I'm just tired of this. These are our energy should be focused on more urgent fights than this fight, which should have been, there should be no fight. It should have been something done before my generation in America.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, I think, your feelings about this are obviously, mirrored in how millions and millions and millions of Americans feel about this too. Do you think this is on purpose? Do you think that, because we have a failed response to a pandemic that he's basically saying like, okay, well, what can I do to piss the most people off with something easy, just some red meat to my base that can easily distract everybody and get them worked up over an issue that clearly they're passionate about?
Well, again, I will never try to understand the mind of Donald Trump. It's not my ideal to be his psychoanalyst to figure out his motivations. My job is to fight him when he's trying to hurt people, is to resist him when he's trying to do damage and harm to the country. Mm-hmm. And this is a presidency that I do not let myself distract even by his rhetoric, because it's the things he's doing, the rules he's making, the things he's failing to do, from his Department of Education, not defending the rights and dignity of LGBTQ kids or Black kids who are subject to different disciplinary practices, his Department of Justice that's failing to do any actions on pattern and practice investigations in police departments. I mean, this is a guy right now that is causing so much harm, and I haven't even started on the international things that he's doing that are so outrageous. So look, there's 100+ days until this guy's before the election. And even then, I still have a lot of work to do when we see how COVID is so devastating Black and Latino communities disproportionately in this country. And we've got legislation that we still have to work out. So I'm not getting in this guy's head. I don't know his politics and his political agenda. I know that I'm determined to defeat him and relegate him to the ignominious corners of our history as the most unsuccessful, the most failed presidency of modern era. And I am so confident that so much information is going to come out that he's been blocking the release of, report after report, that he will, when it's all laid bare, history will look down on this as the most shameful period. And all those who were complicit and enablers, God, I mean, Dante's Inferno, I can tell you the dark corners of hell and purgatory that are relegated to people who were enablers to such a dumpster fire of a presidency. So I'm really busy kind of focusing on the things I could actually affect in this next. And that's the thing I try to tell people all the time, because I have to tell myself this. Don't let his rhetoric, don't let his speeches, don't let his racist rants, don't let his defending of racist relics get you so weary that you're distracted from the work and the fight that you have to do. Stay focused on the fight, because at the end of the day, the biggest threat we have right now, King said it so eloquently, it's not the vitriolic words and violent actions of the bad people, it's the appalling silence and inaction of the good people. If everybody who is offended by him, and this is Republicans and Democrats are offended by so much of his rhetoric, just engaged and activated themselves in this upcoming election, he would get trounced. Mitch McConnell would be in the minority, if not out of the Senate, and we would actually start being able to do significant policies that can unify this nation, heal this nation, and advance this country. Because I could look at take South Korea. I can go through the countries right now that are opening their economies, that have virtually ended the coronavirus, and we are still showing at 5% of the globe's population 25% of its cases. But I could go deeper than that. I mean, we are on a global battle right now. Most people don't see it this way, but on the Foreign Relations Committee, I see it, between authoritarian governments and free democracies. And the authoritarian governments, by the way, the scoreboard from Hungary to Turkey, you see many countries lurching back towards authoritarianism. The democratic principles and values we hail are under assault. And the battle's going on from the continent of Africa to South America. And I tell you, when I have to argue with people that, China builds 18,000 miles of high-speed rail, and the busiest rail corridor in America goes from Boston to Washington, D.C. through our native state, and it runs half an hour slower than it did in the 1960s. Because we have such a broken political system right now And so we have work to do. And this country, this globe needs America. It needs us to deal with our own distraught present. It needs us to deal with our own unexamined history. It needs us to heal. It needs us to come together. It needs us to grow. It needs us to believe the beloved country that everybody from Frederick Douglass to Martin Luther King believed we could be. If we can achieve that and be the multicultural nation of love, put more indivisible into this one nation under God, there's nothing America can't do and achieve. And then we'll lead humanity again in ways that are substantive and important. But right now, we are in a tumult. We are in a struggle. And I think a lot of it's going to play out over this next 365 days to see how we emerge out of this. And so right now is not a time to get distracted by those who want to distract us. They want to be the center of conversation. Now's the time to do the work that makes a democracy function, which is to organize and to get people out to vote and to get people disturbed who are comfortable, get them out of their seats, get them onto the field, because this ain't democracy is not a spectator sport. We got to participate. We've got to engage. We've got to fight.
Well said. So let's talk about some of those reforms that we want to see moving forward. The House's Justice and Policing Act, which again, you co-sponsored in the Senate, it ended no-knock warrants, it banned chokeholds, it ended qualified immunity. The Senate's Justice Act didn't. I believe that the GOP's entire participation here was in bad faith. So is there anything that you would change if the Democrats end up taking the White House and both chambers of Congress in the bill to make it more robust, that you might have moderated so that it would pass this Senate?
So let's be clear. The bill that passed the House is the bill that I helped author. We all came together, me and Kamala, and the head of the Congressional Black Caucus, Karen Bass, head of the House Judiciary Committee, Chairman Nadler. All of us just met and crafted out a bill that was narrowly tailored to stop Black lives from being killed in the immediacy. So all those things you said, chokeholds, carotid holds, Eric Gardner would be alive. No-knock warrants in drug cases, Breonna Taylor would be alive. To hold police accountable so that the guy who put his knee on the neck and tortured and killed George Floyd would be, that the family of George Floyd would be able to sue him in federal court for civil rights damages. These are the kind of things that are not in the Senate Republican bill, but that are in the bill that I co-authored with Kamala Harris and others. And so I want this to be done because it would create transparency on policing around America like we've never seen historically, so that activists, leaders, others can have a full understanding of the patterns and practices. Are they the traffic stops or pedestrian stops? What's the race breakdown? That all this would be laid bare for the public to see, which is really important. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. Number two is it would set standards or ban those practices you and I have already mentioned. And three, it would create consequences when you break our common standards, which is holding people accountable in federal courts. But that's immediate, and that will help save lives. And that should bring us to, when you talk about what I'd like to see, a more robust legislation. Yeah, there are things we know in America that make police and prisons unnecessary. We know that, and this might surprise you, but like expanding Medicaid actually lowers crime in states that haven't done it. Expanding the earned income tax credit, making people more economically secure, lowers crime. There are so many things that we don't do as a society that would elevate human well-being and human flourishing, lower the need for police, lower the need for prisons, and get us out from being the incarceration nation and begin to get us to a nation of freedom, liberty, and a good well-being. And so that's the kind of stuff that we, from drug treatment to mental health care, that we need to start having as a society, as opposed to locking us in this really expensive golden handcuffs that is the American criminal justice system that we've got to stop paying for. We're paying for it with treasure, we're paying for it with lives, and we're paying for it, unfortunately, with the potential of so many people that are robbed of their potential when they get wrapped up in the criminal justice system.
So if Democrats take the White House and the Senate, none of our agenda items get passed with the filibuster intact. And just days ago, for the first time, we've heard more moderate members of the Senate, Democrats like Chris Coons and Joe Manchin, signal an openness to doing so. What's it like behind the scenes with regard to talk about ending the filibuster among Democrats?
Well, I want to get to the filibuster specifically, but I don't want people to think that. So first of all, there's levels to our change that we need to make. if Donald Trump is gone and Mitch McConnell is in the minority or gets beaten in Kentucky, we have a lot we can do right away. Remember, the toxic Trump tax plan was passed through a process called reconciliation. It took only 50 votes. Yeah, exactly. And they got 54 votes for it. And that tax bill shifted trillions of dollars of wealth out of the pockets of many Americans here in New Jersey. I can tell you all the ways, from losing our state and local tax money, deductions, you name it, to not just the wealthiest, but the corporations who then use it for stock buybacks. A third of our stock market is owned by people outside of our country. So it enriched many people outside of America and blew massive holes in our deficit. So I'm telling you right now, before we even get to the filibuster, and I'm going to answer my thoughts on the filibuster, but I just want you to know that just through the tax bill, we can cut poverty in America in half, expand the child tax credit, expand the earned income tax credit. That is a radical reshaping of America's society. We can go further than cutting it in half by doing other things. We can take public education and create a whole new tax bracket. We can get rid of carried interest for the wealthiest tax exclusion, but we can create, hey, if you're working in a public school, we're going to give you a different tax bracket. So you, in effect, teachers, school psychologists, counselors will all get a pay raise. There's so many creative things that you can do through the tax code, because the tax code should reflect our priorities. Right now, I do not think the average priority of Americans is the kind of corporate tax incentives, transfers of wealth that we see going to the wealthiest amongst us. So I just want you to know it's not all for loss. I don't want to engage in that cynicism that says that it won't change. Without the filibuster, we can't do major, major strides. But yes, when you start talking about environmental policy, well, I can do some things by stopping all these tax breaks for oil companies and doing them more for renewables. There are other things that I'd like to see in immigration law, in environmental law, and others. And so how do you do those without, if you only have 51 votes in the United States Senate? And so I think it's right that that people, that you see moderates in the Senate that are not willing to take it off the table, to really have a conversation at that point. And I've actually, you asked me the question, which made me smile, because I actually did in the Democratic cloakroom have a conversation with some other senators about the filibuster. So those conversations actually are had, and I think it's really, really constructive. And I think that we're going to have a larger national dialogue about that as well, that should start hopefully the day after the election in November.
So what was your most memorable day from the campaign trail while you were running for president?
You know, I've been getting very touched now, because we've done sort of reunion calls with people I met on the campaign, and just seeing the degree of kindness and grace that I experienced from supporters and those who were not supporters. It was the most difficult, sort of grueling, time-intensive year of my life, but it was also the most rewarding and personally improving year. And it gave me just a deeper faith in America. My girlfriend had a T-shirt on that was given me by a woman named Nancy Bobo, because in my campaign, one of the stories I would always tell was the last words of one of my great mentors on his deathbed, who, when I was told he couldn't speak, but when I came in and announced myself, I said, "Hey, Frank, it's Cory." And he said, "I see you." He forced the words out. And then I sat with him for a while, just telling him how much he meant with me. And I was getting ready to leave him. And I kissed him on the forehead and held him tight, and said, "I love you, Frank." And then all he could get out was, "I love you." And those words, "I see you, I love you, I see you, I love you," became such a spiritual mantra of our campaign in this country. So many people, do we see them? The person struggling with mental health, do you see them? The person who is considering suicide, do you see them? The mother works 2 jobs but still can barely afford rent. And just this idea of being seen and being loved. And what does love mean, really, in the public space? It means justice, equality, opportunity. And so it was touching that my girlfriend the other day had a shirt on that this woman, incredible woman in Iowa, made for her, that just said those words. And I think that this campaign really made me love and see my country so much deeper. than I had before, and just taught me that you could run a campaign not on anger. Anger is a constructive emotion, but really run it with a call to love and a call to empathy and a call to seeing the dignity and the humanity in everybody, and find traction with that in a time when we all are often triggered and reacting to Donald Trump, to be able to make a narrative that it's not about him, it's about us. It's not a referendum on who he is, it's a referendum on who we are. That we can't fight that darkness with darkness. We got to bring light. I mean, that experience of being able to speak to that every single day was fortifying to me, as it found resonance in other people who had the same yearning that I had for a more beloved country. And so this was a gift to me, that not the t-shirt, but this whole spirit was a gift to me in a way that I'll never forget.
And I think, I'm guilty of it too. It's so easy to get sucked into, the darkness around Donald Trump. And I think, especially on this campaign trail, your voice was singularly, stood out in that way. And it was so important to this campaign. And I don't think that was lost on anyone. One thing I want to ask, you became known for dad jokes on the campaign trail. What was your best dad joke? your best dad joke. Lay it on me.
I think my best dad joke is always the last dad joke, and so I'll give you the one I love right now that I've been telling to much people's pain, and maybe to put in jeopardy my reelection to the Senate. But it's a self-confessional one. What should you call a guy who tells dad jokes who has no children?
What?
A faux pas.
I guess I didn't take into account that I would have to react to your dad joke when I asked you to tell that joke.
You literally, I saw a look of pain and exhaustion on your face that could not be faked.
It's been a long 4 years, Yeah. Okay, so we're both from New Jersey. I want to do a quick New Jersey lightning round. Here's the thing: there is a right and wrong answer to every question here. I'm
afraid, and I'm up for re-election right now. You're about to put me in jeopardy to my Jersey.
This might seal the deal for you.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm really afraid.
Is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
See, I literally was going to anticipate this question because I am a vegan now. It is neither. Neither is. You know what?
Just because you're a vegan, that is the correct answer. Just because you're a vegan, that's the correct answer. Have you ever really experienced joy if you've never eaten at Wawa?
No, you have not.
Correct. Does anyone from New Jersey actually call it Joyzy?
I have not met a Jersey person who said Joyzy ever.
That's correct as well. Should they have allowed the show Jersey Shore to destroy the reputation of our once great state?
Hell no. I am still
That's the correct
angry.
answer.
I have a chip on my shoulder. I'm called to love we are all called to love everybody, but I have a problem with Snooki and the situation to this day.
That's the correct answer. Is there a Central Jersey?
Wow. So this is a hot political question. And I have been converted on this to now say, yes, there is a Central Jersey.
That is the correct answer. Absolutely the correct answer.
All right.
And finally, what's a word that New Jersey has taught you to say incorrectly?
So I'm embarrassed I'm about to admit this, but as a kid, I thought idea was spelled with an R. It's crazy, but I did as a little kid.
That speaks to me on such a deep level.
So I have to say that I went to California for college, so I was teased mercilessly about my Jersey accent out there.
It's the weirdest thing. We add R's to words that end in A, and words that end in R, we end them with A's. It's the weirdest thing. I called it a sock drawer until I went to college. I was I just channeling my Jewish grandmother here, and I just go.
But you keep it in the sock drawer. I keep it in the closet.
That's right.
CLAW.
That's right. Yeah. Well, as hard as it's made it for us, there's a lot of love for New Jersey.
We've done all right in our life. We have. We made Jersey a little more proud, both of us.
That's it. And at the very least, if nothing else, at least we have, Bruce and Bon Jovi. So there's always that.
Thank God. Yes. Oh Lord. You give love a good name, man.
That's right. All right, Senator Cory Booker, thank you so much for taking the time to talk.
Thank you very much.